Well, it was the game of the year, and Marty, you were lucky enough to be in the building. What was the atmosphere like for the Sabres' thrilling win over the Lightning?
It was absolutely crazy, and I know that, you don't get too many of those games in seasons that matters, right? Because when you're looking at the Buffalo Sabres, this was not just an emotional game and a back and forth and a lot of goals and physicality. It was first in the Atlantic Division, and, when it's been 14 years since you've made the playoffs, those games matter. That was a big showdown. Saturday was quiet in the building against Nashville. Everybody was looking ahead to Sunday and that showdown for the top of the division, and it delivered. And look, it's not just the Sabres. Tampa played a great game too, and they were physical too. But at the end of the night, when you're the one that gets the win and you get to see your name at the top of the division and the fans get to celebrate it on a Monday morning, it was absolutely crazy. And Lindy Ruff called it a galvanizing type of game. The Sabres have been criticized so much over the last few years for not sticking up for one another. Well, they showed that they've grown and matured, and they are a real team now. So that was great to see.
Yeah, it sounds like they've got quite the brotherhood going on. Now, the Sabres haven't made the playoffs since 2011. When people think wild games in the Sabres, they really think about you against the Senators. So, Marty, how does the vibe in Buffalo now match some of those teams from the early 2000s?
Well, it's all about playoffs, right? And that's why this has been so important, because they see their team going to the playoffs and maybe even making noise in the playoffs. And when you think of, the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres in 1998 and the rivalry that developed after that, it was because of playoffs. The Ottawa Senators, you go back to Derek Plant scoring in Game 7 overtime on Ron Tugnut, the Pekka Yashin battle, the Pominville overtime shorthanded goal. And then the very next year, Ottawa beating Buffalo in the conference finals. It usually starts with the playoffs. Yes, it had been almost 20 years since a regular season had that impact because, well, I decided to fight Ray Emery and it wasn't good for me, but it was great for everybody that was there. But usually it's in the playoffs that you have those type of games, those emotional games, a game that the fans will talk about for years. This one happened in the regular season, but everybody understands that, with 18 games left to the season, the Sabres are looking at game 83, which would be a great thing for the fans and the players themselves.
Well, in this game against a division rival, no less as well. Now, okay, this current team, Buffalo, buzzing, no denying how entertaining the run has been. But do you think they're a real threat to contend for the Cup?
Yeah, I do. The one thing with the Buffalo Sabres is the way that they are built now. Like, they made a big deal over the summer trading J.J. Peterka to Utah. They added Josh Doan. He's added depth. They added Kessler on the blue line. They went and acquired Logan Stanley and Shen from the Winnipeg Jets, Pearson and Carrick up front. But they kept everybody in the locker room, and their depth was already strong, right? Players coming up and playing big minutes from Rochester or being put in a different role. The one question mark was always going to be the goaltending. They've been rotating Luukkonen and Lyon since the Olympic break, and I think it's going to continue a little bit. But if you're looking around the Eastern Conference, you're looking at Vasilevsky. Carolina has got a great team defense, and Brendan Bussey's been really good. You're looking at Sorokin with the New York Islanders. Even with Detroit, you're looking at John Gibson. So there is some really heavyweight goaltenders in the division, in the conference, that you're going to have to be able to outplay at some point in the playoffs. But it's about team defense. It's about, sticking together, and they showed that. And yes, Luukkonen and Lyon have been really good as well when you look at goal save above expectations.
And Marty, not to be lost in all of this, this is a team that fired their GM just before Christmas. We're now talking about the Stanley Cup. Is this the wildest NHL story in recent memory?
Yeah, I got to go back to the St. Louis Blues being last in the NHL and ended up making the playoffs and winning the Stanley Cup. But when I look at the Sabres so many times over the past few years, they were in the conversation right around December, around the holidays, and then they've fallen off in the second half. They were even first in 2016-17, right around Christmas, and then they missed the playoffs, right? And they go on these lengthy losing streaks that have really hurt them. So I look at St. Louis being able to do it. I think this Sabres team has the same vibe. December 9th, they were last in the Atlantic Division. All 7 other teams were doing much better, and now they flipped the script in just 3 months, and they are first in the division. So it has St. Louis Blues vibe, and unfortunately for the Sabres, they won't know for a few months if it's going to continue that way.
That's right. Well, Sabres do now have the third best odds to represent the East in the Cup final. That's behind only Tampa and Carolina.